Pardon me if I don't look at the camera very much. I don't really like to look at myself. So we only figured out we were, sorry, back up. I'm September. Um, we also go by the crunchy leave system or the September system. Um, we've kind of adopted a lot of different monikers over the years because fear of identity, things like that, I guess. Um, but right now we're going with September or Cain. Um, we figured out we were a system at the beginning of 2020, right around the beginning of March or end of February. And it was like a long time coming. Like, we'd been on antipsychotics for over 10 years. We didn't realize they weren't doing anything for us. We were taking them to control angry outbursts. That was pretty much the only reason, as far as I know. But all those antipsychotics really did was amp up our dissociation to like 45 out of 10. And yeah, we went through a lot of stuff that others of us didn't know about, and others of us did a lot of things that others of us didn't know about, and it's just been a constant waking up in situations not knowing what's going on for the past 10 years, and not just waking up from the night of sleep, but like coming to from dissociation. Like, we would switch in and out, and we would never know who was who or where they were going or that they had even been there. We didn't know we were any more than a singlet. We were just living life, doing what we could, functioning when we could, functioning as much as we could, which wasn't very much, and never for very long. We got involved with stuff that we shouldn't have been at ages that we shouldn't have been doing it. And eventually we got introduced to age play, and from there we learned about age regression. And age regression called out to us much more, but we had already sort of initiated a age play-esque relationship with our current partner, because we didn't know any better. We didn't know a lot of things. We didn't know that when we dissociated and had panic attacks during intimate times, we didn't realize that was littles getting triggered. We didn't know. So when we found out, the first thing we wanted to do was protect each other, because all of a sudden it wasn't just me hurting myself. It was, there's kids in here who don't know any better. There's people in here who have been hurt. There's parts of us that are only being hurt every single time because they're the only ones who can take the hurt. And that pains me even to just think about personally. There's parts that only come out when we get triggered, and they come out specifically to sort of paralyze us and just wait until it's over. We have a part whose name is Renee Listens, and her whole job is to look attentive while we're dissociating. We don't even know if she retains the stuff that she hears. And we're sure that there's others who are like her, that their job is to dissociate and play along. And realizing that they were in here, that we were hurting them, that it wasn't just about me, I wouldn't hit a room full of kids. So thinking about how they might have interpreted the things we've done to ourselves, it hurts to even think about, because there have been so many times where we were like, well, this is probably just something we have to work through, so we'll just put up with it for now and force our way through it until it stops happening. But I'm not forcing myself through it. I'm forcing a child through it. It's different. And I'm sure parents would feel the same way. If it's just about you, it's not such a big deal. But when your kids can't eat, then it's a problem. And that's how I feel as a part of this system personally. And I've done a lot of damage to this system. Done a lot of damage to this body, to our lives, to everything. I've inflicted trauma upon us with my own actions. So when we realized we were a system, alongside wanting to curb these behaviors that we knew were now hurting others beyond just ourselves as an individual self, we were like, I want to stop hurting myself. I want to stop hurting others. I want to stop being mean. I want to stop getting so angry. I want to stop all of this. I want these intrusive thoughts to stop. I want all of it to stop. I want to get better. I want to recover. And what was I saying? Oh. I'm sorry. But yeah. Right. So, yeah, we turned to YouTube and Discord looking for information, wanting to learn more, wanting to get better. We didn't want to wait for a therapist. We wanted to amass as much information and tools as we could, but we also, for whatever reason, didn't want to jump right into diagnostic stuff, because usually when we do that, psychiatrists and doctors get mad at us because we're like using terms that we're not supposed to know. The stupidest thing I ever experienced was telling a therapist that I was experiencing dissociation, and I realized it because I had looked it up, and him responding, I don't think you really know what dissociation is, because if you were dissociating, you wouldn't know that you were dissociating. Boy, I wanted to reach across the table and slap that man. But anyway, and that was back when I was only diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which many people will tell you BPD, you can experience dissociation from BPD. Not necessarily alters, but yeah, that's a thing. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, we turned to YouTube and stuff, and we found DissociaDID, and then all that stupid drama happened. And one of the things we had learned about DissociaDID was that they were an overt system. And we were like, okay, cool, we're also overt system, we think, pretty sure based on prior and whatever, blah, blah. But, I mean, there's a lot of memory missing, so it's kind of like, I feel like if anybody around us had known anything about DID, we probably were overt, but nobody knew anything back then, so, anyway, please stop. I'm having a really hard time right now. I guess this is more upsetting to us than we thought it was. But yeah, all that stuff with dissociated happened, and we felt like hot garbage. Um, and then we found alternative system, and we related to them even more because we could see the overtness in their behavior. Um, they didn't work so hard to hide their symptoms. Um, and that was something we admired. We were like, well, if we were going to make a YouTube channel, the most important thing to that channel would have to be the honesty, at least for us. We want people to see just stuff. I don't know. Like, it's hard to explain. We didn't want to have to edit who we were. We didn't want to have to put on a face. We didn't want to have to use all this editing software and all this shit. And we didn't want to have to hide anything. But as it turns out, alternative system has some pretty not so savory traits that are not due to their mental illness. Although I guess that's kind of a too wide of a brush to stroke with. It probably is related to their trauma. It probably is related to their mental health in general. It's probably related to them not being in the treatment that they need. I don't know if they're in treatment. I don't know if what their therapist is like. I don't know any of that, but I get the impression that they're not trauma processing is good and all, but you have to unlearn all the coping skills you learned while or before trauma processing, at least in my opinion. The most important thing before addressing the trauma is making sure you have the coping skills, making sure you have the social skills, making sure that, the dissociation is as little as it can be, that all these other things. If you just jump right into talking about the bullshit and you don't do anything about the behaviors that you picked up, then rehashing that trauma is just going to bring that shit right back up, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's the same with flashbacks. If your brain's not ready to deal with that shit, you're not going to deal with it well if you try to. At least, like, you shouldn't dive headfirst into your trauma, not until you're ready, Like, the first step is stabilization, and then rehabilitation, and then processing, and then more rehabilitation. Like, see, what I'm learning right now, what we're learning right now, is how to apologize, we're working on bringing down the dissociative barriers. We're working on identifying triggers because our dissociation is so bad we don't even know half our triggers. Like, some of them are obvious, but some others aren't. And yeah, I was going somewhere with all of this. Oh, so we grew up from a very, very young age convinced that something was wrong with us. I'm cracking my joints, by the way. I don't know if you can hear that, but in case you can hear popping, that's my joints. But we grew up with the idea that we were a monster, that we were an unrepentant monster who would never be able to change. And that has been hard as hell to let go of. And it still hasn't, we still hold that somewhere inside. And We turned to DissociaDID and then alternative system because we were looking for evidence that people like us, like people who have a hard time apologizing, people who gaslight on instinct because that's how they learn to interact with one of their parents, kids who learn to manipulate from an early age because they learned that it was one of the very few ways to get what we needed. We didn't have the worst childhood, but we did have to learn a lot of unsavory shit to get through it. And that stuff has followed us into adulthood. And it wasn't until we were an adult that we realized how much it wasn't the distrust of people. It was the lying and the manipulation and the pushing people away and the threatening and the loud yelling and the explosive rage. That was what was causing problems for us. And we wanted proof that even people like that, people like us who struggled to not be abusive, we could get better too, if we want to. Just because I learned how to do this shit so well that I can do it to my own system without thinking about it, unintentionally drive us all into a panic attack together, it doesn't mean I have to grow up and become the kind of person that my fucking piece of shit dad was. It doesn't mean I have to just, it doesn't mean I should just forget about the things I should take accountability for. I did a lot of fucked up shit when I was a kid. And a lot of it I did because I was under the impression that it wasn't a big deal. Child on child abuse was the thing in my neighborhood. We were all doing it to each other. None of us knew how bad we were hurting each other. We were little kids. We had no idea what we were doing to each other. And this was way before my parents got involved in the hurt that I was dealing with. And even in high school, I was mean. I was cruel. I bullied my brothers to the point that they just didn't feel like they were part of our family. I was so mean to people for no reason. I was one of those shitty kids who would go online and make somebody feel like ass about their creation, about their original character or their story. I was that kid who bullied the kids in the special ed class who I felt were dumber than me. I was that kid. I was a horrible person. I remember a lot of the mean things we did. I did. And I've spent my whole life now trying to convince myself that I'm not a monster when everything I've ever done is monstrous. And I want so badly to believe that I can change. That I can be somebody like Multiplicity in Me, or Entropy System, or I can't even think of any cool role models right now. There were so many things I did. And I'm trying so hard to get better. And I just want to find a role model who struggles with this kind of shit the way that I do. With the intrusive thoughts that make you scared to have kids. With the, I'm afraid to be around children. I don't feel comfortable in a room with children. I don't feel comfortable. I feel ashamed of every moment of my life. I bullied my boyfriend out of the apartment to go catch up on his job just this past year. And I tell myself I only do this shit when I have to, but that's not true. And it never was true. But I'm trying to get better. I am trying so hard to get better. And finding people like DissociaDID and Alternative System who say they are trying to get better, who say they are putting in the work, but that doesn't show in any way. They don't change, they don't atone, they don't apologize, they don't take accountability, they brush things under the rug. I didn't realize Alternative System had posted age play content on their Not Safe for Work Twitter account and OnlyFans. Like that's something they already do. I didn't know that. And that one piece of information completely changes the situation about them advertising their DID channel to their Not Safe for Work followers. It is because they are already appealing to age players and now connecting those age players to a community of traumatized survivors. That's not the move. That is definitely not the move. And I did not realize that that was what was going on. So I defended her. I defended them. I defended them because they were like me. I thought they were like me. I thought they were trying to get better. I thought that people just had a misconception about them because they had a nasty temper and they didn't say sorry every time. Because to me, the actual I'm sorry moment is less important than the change. If somebody tells you you fucked up, but it's hard to apologize, fine. Apologize in private. Take the shit down they asked you to take down. It's that simple. That's not what Alternative System did, and that's not what DissociaDID did. That they lie, they cover up. When it comes out, they gaslight, they cover up. They pretend it's not a big deal. I just want to know that there's people like me who are trying as hard as they fucking can to not grow up to be abusers. Yeah, not every abuse victim becomes an abuser, but those of us who are more likely to become abusers, those of us who already struggle with not being abusive, where are y'all at? Because somebody told me that I wasn't a monster, but if I'm really the only one, I don't even know what I'm thinking. I just want to know that I really can change. I just want to change.